for watching Numbskull News, and I had to do it. Had to make another ACC video, and I blame it on Pete Thamel. The son bitch had to come out and put out an article in which he says that UNC and Virginia are the primary targets, or the most important targets, or however you want to word it, for the Big Ten. I have a lot of questions about that. Now, look, Pete Thamel, of course, he's a legitimate guy, legitimate journalist. He's got real sources. So, yeah, you should pay attention and take seriously what he says. But it doesn't mean you can't ask some questions like, okay, he shouldn't dissolve, he shouldn't put out there his sources, he shouldn't put his sources out there. Of course not. Journalists don't, and they shouldn't, unless it's cool with the source, of course. But, I got a question, like okay, so you got to speculate who's his possible source. Could it be a Big Ten president? Yeah, there's 14 of them. So maybe one of those guys. I seriously doubt it's the new commissioner because he just got there and he's been mostly working on just trying to fix the media deal so everyone can get paid and be happy on what time and what time of year they play and where they play and all that kind of shit. So, it's not him. It's not Petiti. But it could be a chancellor in one of those 14 schools. It could be a president in one of those 14 schools. And is this their personal list that they wrote down? Is this the Big Ten master list? Because every conference has got an expansion list. Even the Mountain West, even the AAC, they all got their expansion list for if they need or want to expand. Here's their list, and they'll go through and check boxes and see who they want to add. So, has this stuff been thoroughly researched? Have they went to their media partners and with their list and go over it together and get a really finalized list? Is that what it is? We don't know that. He just put out, hey, this is what I'm hearing, which that phrase has been used in this realignment saga ad nauseum. So that doesn't impress me much that that's what he heard from a source. Do I believe that? I believe that's true for some people in the Big Ten, maybe not everybody in the Big Ten. Is that true for Fox, who's a Big Ten's primary media rights partner? Don't know that either. I have a hard time with that. As I said in previous videos, and I'll regurgitate here to you, ACC thing. I mean, what is the over-under on when the ACC implodes? 3.5 years, over-under. Is it going to be less, around 3 years, under that, or over that? Don't know. It's not going to 2036. I think we all know there's been enough smoke out there that this thing ain't going to 2036. So, somewhere in the later 2020s probably is where this thing's going to, jump off. And at that point, it's going to be really the choice of Fox and or ESPN on who they're willing to pay for to bring into the conferences that they pay for. It's not going to, is it up to the conferences? Yeah, to a point. Because, none of them are going to give up a shit ton of money to bring in any school. They want their media rights partner to pay for that. They don't have to pay out of pocket for a program. Not when they don't have to, because both of those conferences, as currently constructed with 16 members, make ass tons of money, and just based off of that will make even more money in their next media rights deals, possibly $80 million a year just on media rights alone. Not talking NCAA tournament payouts, not talking about college football playoff payouts, no corporate sponsors, not the Big Ten network, not the SEC network, none of these other revenue streams, just your basic media rights deal. Both those conferences could be at $80+ million a year, just ground level media rights deal. That's an astronomical amount of money. And that's very, very realistic for both of those conferences to get to in their next media rights deals. So, does Fox or ESPN want to pay $80+ million a year for Virginia or UNC? I know North Carolina's worth a lot. I know Virginia's worth a lot. Are they worth $80+ million a year? And I know what you're going to say. They would be brought in not at a full membership, but a smaller amount. Okay, but eventually they will be made whole and they will be making 80 plus million a year. So eventually the money will get to that level. And does Fox and ESPN want to pay for that? Eventually you get to a point of diminishing returns. You're paying more than what you're getting. And as much as I think, and Brett Yormark thinks, that basketball is underevaluated, it's being underpaid, it has not hit its ceiling yet. You can do a lot more with basketball and make more money on it. And UNC is absolutely a juggernaut. Virginia is absolutely a huge brand in basketball. But that's not what the realignment fully is about. It's a part of it. All right, there's a lot of parts to why a conference accepts and invites a team and a team goes to a conference. The biggest chunk of that, all right, if you want to slice it up into a pie chart, let's say, the biggest piece of that pie is the football program. How big of a brand is it? How much, what kind of ratings does it get? How much does it drive things? Because in every program, it's always the football that drives everything. UNC and Virginia too, the football does not drive anything. In North Carolina, the basketball is the driver there. It just is, whether it's ratings or anything else. Now, if North Carolina football plays Florida State, you'll get a big ratings bump. If they happen to play Texas, they happen to play Michigan, Penn State, of course, there'll be a huge rating. But they can't consistently keep that up. So when UNC goes and plays some backwater JUCO school, what do you think happens to the football rating? What do you think happens to the Tar Heels rating at that point? Does it break 1 million? No, because no one cares about that brand in football. They care about it in basketball. So that's my question. I'm not saying they won't get into the Big Ten. I just have my doubts. I'm a natural contrarian. I ask questions. I just don't buy into everything that I read and buy about UNC or Virginia for that matter. Why leave them out? And it wasn't just Pete Thamel. Jim Williams, who I really respect, here's a guy with all this experience in media, higher up in Fox for a long time. He goes on little independent creators on YouTube, their channels, when he doesn't have to, right? 365 Sports, I get Jim Williams being, on there a lot. All right, that's a big outlet. But you're talking about other people that may have 4,000 or 5,000 subscribers, not huge, and he goes on their shows. I think that's awesome with the guy. I got less than 1,000 subscribers, but he's interacted with me before on Twitter. It's really cool like that. He doesn't have to do that. He could big time the shit out of me if he wanted to, but he doesn't. Really awesome guy. However, he put out that the Big Ten should go after. I'm not saying it's based off of a source, but it could be. Jim Williams has a lot of sources. But he's saying Georgia Tech and Miami. Now, I agree with Miami. Not so sure about Georgia Tech. I know the market, right? You want to get into Georgia, Atlanta. It's a huge market. I get that. The Big Ten, you just deduce how they've done business all these years. They love getting into huge markets because you get a lot of money from the cable distribution and all that stuff, carriage fees, and I'll get into that crap in a minute. I get all that, but I have a feeling a lot of the realignment that's going to be going on and the last several moves of realignment, Texas OU, UCLA, USC, it wasn't purely based off of market. Played a role, obviously, but it's going to be more about brands and matchups. All right, so that's why I do believe Miami's going to go to one of the big two because you got to look at the matchups, right? Miami versus Florida, that's big. Miami versus LSU versus Alabama versus Georgia versus Texas versus Oklahoma. Those are all huge quality matchups because Miami's a huge, legendary brand. Now, if they go to the Big Ten, Miami versus Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. Hell, throw in Nebraska, Wisconsin, Minnesota. You can throw in USC, even UCLA. Those are sellable matchups. Those are matchups people will watch. Like, wow, cool. Miami versus Wisconsin. That's interesting. Now, Georgia Tech versus Florida. Who cares? Georgia Tech versus Alabama. Okay. Georgia Tech versus Texas versus Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. And you see what I'm saying? There's not a really. You see that on the TV? You may stop to see, you may stop for a second and check out, okay, let's see what Alabama looks like today. Let's see what, maybe you're a Texas fan, so you're going to watch it. But if you're, just a college football fan, you love these matchups, and your favorite team is already played or they're not playing that particular Saturday or whatever. Oh, okay, there's an interesting Georgia game. Who are they playing? Georgia Tech. Okay, it's interstate rivalry. There's a little something there. But let's say Georgia Tech's playing Florida. Let's say they're playing LSU. All right, they're playing Texas A&M. Do you really care? Do you really care? Then you go to another channel. Well, there's Clemson playing Alabama. Which one of those are you going to watch? Right? What if Florida State? Let's say Florida State's playing Oklahoma. Holy shit. I think I'm watching that game. Right? Now, you do that with Virginia and North Carolina. All right, North Carolina versus Florida. Who gives a damn? North Carolina versus Georgia. No one gives a shit about that. Versus Texas, Ohio State, Michigan. Where's the matchup? I mean, UNC this year versus Alabama in basketball. Oh, that's a primo matchup. That's a primo matchup for the 2022 season. This year, in 2023, in football, no one gives a damn about that matchup. It doesn't sell anything. Alabama fans will fill that up. SEC fans will fill that up. But they fill up every game. They'll watch Alabama play whatever JUCO they play every year. It doesn't matter. No one cares about those matchups between UNC and Virginia and Georgia Tech versus whatever blue blood. Not in football, they don't. And that's a problem. And I think that's a real problem as far as Fox or ESPN looking at those programs saying, let's give them $80+ million a year for nothing in football, for no matchups in football, nothing sellable in football. That's ridiculous. That's where I have trouble. Now maybe I'm wrong, but until I'm proven wrong, I'm not going to admit I'm wrong. So those three programs, they get into one of the big two conferences, and I'll say, oh shit, okay. They see something. I guess basketball is way more valuable than everyone gives it credit for because that's the only thing they got. And Georgia Tech doesn't really have either. So it's only about the market with them. But let me get into these carriage fees. This is the last time I did a video on the ACC about carriage in the comments. Here come experts in my comments. Really? Really? You got people like, I used to work in the media industry. What did you take out the trash? Did you mop the floor? Did you clean the toilet? What do you mean you used to work in the that's so general. Oh, yeah, I used to work in the. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know how any of this stuff works. Oh, but you do. Then I start getting educated about carriage fees. Oh, carriage, they could add in South Florida and make all this money on carriage fees. Certain G5s and bring in all kinds of money. Then why aren't they in one of the big two conferences if they're worth all that money? I asked that question. No one ever got back to me. And here's another thing I have a problem with. Okay, let's think about real experts out there in the world. The Bob Thompsons, Jim Williams, Oran, Marchand. None of them have talked about carriage fees. The Marchand, Oran podcast, it's all about the business of sports. Haven't said boo about carriage fees. Bob Thompson used to run Fox Sports anyway, and hasn't said shit about it. Jim Williams. They have worked in that industry, have dealt with carriage fees before. If this was one of the big reasons to add a team is the carriage fees, then I think realignment would look a lot different. It would look a lot different, apparently, because of how the carriage fees work. If they were that valuable and that important, I'm not saying that they don't have value. They have value to the Big Ten network. They have value to the SEC network, but they really have a lot of value to Fox or ESPN. I don't know that. Maybe somewhat, but that's not the top reason to add. Apparently, because the real experts out there don't seem to think it's worthy to mention anything about carriage fees. So the next dumbass that wants to get in my comments to talk about carriage fees, I don't know what I'm talking about. Who the hell are you? I know I'm a nobody. I know I'm just a dumbass out here speculating. But there is a thing called logic. And regardless of your educational level, anybody can have some basic ass logic. And the basic ass logic tells me carriage fees are a part of the business. They're important. Apparently, they are worth some money. But apparently, they're not the overriding factor when it comes to realignment, or else it'd be part of the vernacular, like market, like brand. You know, those words are very much part of the realignment vernacular. Why? Because those are the kind of things, apparently, these conferences and media rights partners are looking at when making the selection on who to add and who not to. Not carriage fees. So you can put that in your ass and carriage it on the fuck out of here, because it ain't worth two shits. And when I start seeing Bob Thompson talk about carriage fees and how it's so important and no one's talking about it, then I'm going to listen. When it's Jim Williams starts talking about it, preaching about it, saying, hey, they're going to add this because of the carriage fees, then I will listen. When Andrew Marchand or Oran, I think it's Bob Oran maybe, I don't know. But when those guys start reporting big time on carriage fees, how important it is to this conference for these teams to get in because of the carriage fees, I will listen. And I'll say, hey, there's a lot to this. But until that happens, I'm not. Because there's no reason for it. Why? Because two supposed people with all this experience in media say it is. It's too good, man. I think it's too funny. All these people with all this secret hidden knowledge. Anyway, man, that's all I got on this crap. And I hope to God I don't have anything more on the ACC for a while. But, I don't know. It's kind of fun. Anyway. I'll be back with some other crap later. Bye.